My guest is one of India's best-known politicians, the MP Shashi Tharoor. In 2014, his Congress party was handed its worst ever national election defeat, since when it's gone on losing. Does this, the party of the Gandhi dynasty, deserve to survive? Shashi Tharoor, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Good to be with you again, Tim.
2014, your Congress party had its worst ever national election defeat. The string of losses has gone on since then. Is it time to kiss the party goodbye?
No, because though it was indeed the worst ever electoral defeat, there were a couple of consolations, oddly enough, amid the carnage. We still were the only party that actually won something everywhere. In other words, where we'd won 10 or 12 seats, we'd only won 1 or 2 this time around. We won them in the northwest, in the southwest, in the northeast, in the heartland.
But you lost power in Assam, you lost it in Kerala, you didn't get a single seat in Delhi.
You're now referring to the election since 14. I was talking about 14 But since 14, what we've done well has been Bihar, where we are in power after a very long time. And what we've done not so well, I would suspect, is the states you mentioned, where we had been in power for some time, and anti-incumbency is a very powerful factor.
But you have a losing ticket, a proven losing ticket with Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. You have a man in Rahul Gandhi who clearly doesn't even want to be in Parliament, does he? That's one of the worst attendance records, doesn't he? Worst attendance records. It's 54%, the national average is 81%. Since 2014, his attendance rate was 54%. Number of questions asked, 0. Private members' bills, 0. A below-average MP by every measurement.
Except that he's also a party leader here, and sometimes...
But he's not a winning ticket, Shashi Tharoor, is he? He's not a winning ticket, he's a losing ticket.
He has won in the past and can win again.
How many train wrecks can this party absorb?
Well, look, we are certainly going through a pretty bad phase of our existence, but we believe we have what it takes to come back. We have the right values and principles. We have a long and pedigreed history. We have a presence throughout the country. We are still a party with a national footprint.
With his leadership facing a court case, allegations of illegally acquired land. Supreme Court said the other day, this case should go ahead.
Look, cases can well go ahead, but nobody has been found guilty of anything. It's very easy, I'm afraid, in our country to file charges. But in this particular case, and I think you're referring to what's known as the National
case quashed, and the Supreme Court refused to do that.
They wanted to quash it without a trial.
It's not a great recommendation to have that against the leadership. Aren't you sick of dynastic parties and dynastic rule in India? People passing it from one member of the family to the other. It's like handing round the soup plates at dinner, isn't it? But hasn't this gone on long enough in India?
The problem, Tim, is that it's going on in pretty much every party, so that it's very difficult to single one out. What I've discovered about Indian politics, having entered it, is that a great deal of what you and I might consider to be not the best democratic practice is so deeply entrenched in our culture that it's infected our politics as well.
Yeah, but your party was in power longer than anybody else since independence and did nothing about this.
I mean, look, since fortunately, for this purposes of this conversation, I can assure you that I have never had anybody in my family in politics in either direction, nor do I have any children who are interested in inheriting what I have to say, and I'm there because of my personal convictions. Let me say that
don't think that's healthy?
Invade this profession too does not objectively seem ideal, but it's rampant throughout all.
Had more time than any other party to do something
Tim,
about
listen,
this.
Over 3,000 years, we have Bollywood film stars who are the sons of Bollywood film stars. We have dentists who are the sons of dentists. We have carpenters who are the sons of carpenters. Ours has become a culture. That's how the caste
and you have
system
crooks
began.
sitting in Parliament. September 2013, The Hindu reported that 30% of sitting MPs were facing criminal charges against them. And this continues to this day, and your party is as bad in this, if not worse, than the BJP.
Actually, the current percentages put us well below the BJP on this particular area.
I don't think so. In the Punjab elections this year, 8% of your party's candidates faced serious criminal charges. The BJP clocked up 4%. In the Goa
the BJP
elections...
has fewer candidates because they're not a contender.
We're looking at the percentage. We're looking at the percentage of candidates. In Goa, 16% of your candidates facing serious charges, 8% of the BJP's. Uttarakhand, 17% of your candidates accused of serious crimes.
Tim, this is why I feel that people with my sort of background should also come into politics, and we should have educated professionals also entering the fray.
But you were a government minister in your party. You didn't do anything about this.
I couldn't do anything about that.
We didn't even raise your voice against it, did you?
No, I've written books raising my voice against this. I decried this 20 years ago.
But the fact is, with all the years that your party was in power, you cemented this unbreakable nexus of politicians and corrupt business. No, you cemented it.
You're now going on to a different tack, because criminal charges are one thing, corrupt practices with business are another. I've decried that too, but that's a different phenomenon. But
it stuck. It was cemented during years of Congress party rule, wasn't it?
Unfortunately, every party is complicit. I have decried this, and I've decried it in Parliament, by the way, in speeches in Parliament. I have said that we cannot remain silent about political corruption and talk about black money as if it's only coming out of real estate transactions and things like that.
Your party, Shashi Tharoor, has performed significantly worse on financial transparency than the BJP. During the financial years between 2004-05 and 2014-15, 83% of your party's total income came from unknown sources, compared to 65% of the BJP's. You don't obey the rules that there are there. The rules are full of loopholes, aren't they?
And that's why they need to be changed. And in fact, one of the proposals which has come up now is that the anonymous donations have to be capped at a much lower figure. I think it's 2,000 rupees rather than 20,000 rupees.
Let's go back to something you said, February 2014. You wrote that the UPA, the Congress-led government, had demonstrated a commitment to accountability and transparency and had taken unprecedented measures to bring transparency into India's
the Right to Information Act,
often opaque systems. By the end of its term, your government was drowning in one high-profile corruption scandal after another. And you pride yourself on transparency? Let's not rewrite history, Shashi Tharoor. India under your government became a byword for corruption internationally, didn't it?
Well, let me say that the reference in my statement that you quoted was above all to the Right to Information Act, under which any Indian citizen can put a letter on a postcard or a sheet of paper and have information made available about every penny of taxpayers' money being spent or misspent by the government, ensuring that the conduct of elected officials is indeed made transparent.
But it didn't affect the scandals. It didn't affect these huge financial scandals that your government perpetrated. The Commonwealth Games, for instance, in 2010, which ended up costing 18 times its original budget.
Well, look,
Central Vigilance Commission said around $1.8 billion had gone astray. The telecom scam, cash for votes.
But the question is, Tim, there's been an opposition party in power for the last 3 years. Why has no one been convicted of these scams really were what they were portrayed as being?
You asked about Kashmir. You asked this about an interview a year ago. And you talked about human rights abuses, and you said rather casually, as far as the wrongs in Kashmir are concerned, Indians have been the first to acknowledge them, to take action. It's not true, is it?
Well, it is. I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't. But a single crime or misbehavior even in Kashmir that hasn't first been exposed by an Indian individual, by an Indian person in authority, by an Indian media person, or by an Indian NGO. In other words, Indians are the first to bring these up. It's impossible
But this is a complete variant. People who had disappeared.
Sadly, one of
Kashmir.
the realities in Kashmir is that the armed forces and the authorities are blamed for a number of the actions undertaken by terrorists. People are too scared to blame the terrorists because they fear for their own lives, so they blame the military.
There's lack of freedom.
There are searing conversations about some of these things that take place that it is not in India's interest to display publicly outside, because it's not as if we're in some sort of living room situation. We are facing an onslaught by terrorists, trained, armed, equipped, and sent across the border by a malign military establishment in Pakistan.
And whatever you're meeting with for constant violations and torture which have been laid at the door of the Indian.
Do you think terrorists respect human rights?
You claim to be a democracy.
They exactly.
Don't. You claim to be a democracy.
That's why
I went to a different standard.
And we do. Also very many good examples of outstandingly responsible, supportive behavior towards the local population, of which I can give you many examples.
Your interlocutors
you're singling out certain details which, in the course of an ongoing 25-year war imposed upon us with a terrorist onslaught that have been taking innocent civilian lives as well as military lives day after day.
The detention of political prisoners without the process of law. So I ask you again, are you proud of India's record in Kashmir?
I can tell you what I am
That's
proud
not
of.
a proud
I'm
list,
proud of the
it?
fact that free and fair elections have been held despite
the interlocutors reported
one
that.
election rigged in 1987. That's what they're referring to. I know the interlocutors.
They're not just referring to one.
There have been none since then, and no one has suggested that. There have been international observers. Even the militant parties have not accused these elections. I'm telling you that the elections of 87 were a huge mistake, and they were rigged undoubtedly, and undoubtedly this was certainly one of the mistakes that sparked off.
Talk about Britain plundering. You still employ in India many of the laws and practices from the British occupation.
Are you proud of that, Tim?
No, but you called them obnoxious. Are you proud that you still have obnoxious
That's why
laws?
I'm opposing them. I'm trying to get them reformed, changed,
you haven't had much success.
I haven't had much success, but that's why you must speak up for the right, even if you don't succeed.
Do you still think that your party deserves to survive, given all the human rights abuses and corruption that we've talked about?
You know, it's like saying, do you think somebody deserves to survive because he's got a wart on his face or a pimple on his nose?
It's a bit more than that.
No, it's not a bit more. There's a far more important things the party stands for. It stands for the pluralist identity of India. It stands for the values of the freedom struggle. It stands for social justice. It stands for the distribution of the profits of government, while standing also for the growth that has enabled India to become one of right now the third largest economy in the world. The Congress Party inherited from the British and India with 90% of the population living under the poverty line. Today it's 26. It inherited an India with 17% literacy. Today it's 72. It inherited an India with life expectancy of 27. Today that's 70. Some progress has been made, and the Congress Party ruled India for much of the time this progress was being made. Let's not write all that off.
Very good to have you on Conflict Zone. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Tim.